There's a feeling that shows up without warning. Nothing is wrong, nothing happened, and then, out of nowhere, something tightens in your chest, like a clock is running somewhere, and it's already ahead of you. You can't point to why. No one said anything to you, but the feeling is there anyway, sitting behind your ribs, whispering that everyone else figured something out that you haven't. You brush it off. You've felt this before. It comes, it sits for a while, it leaves. But stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll know exactly what that feeling actually is. Not a vague mood, a specific, nameable mechanism running quietly every day of your life. And once you can name it, you'll have one simple question you can ask yourself. Right in the moment it hits, that takes most of its power away. Here's what you tell yourself. I'm just going through a slower season. Everyone has seasons like this. You had a rough year, a distraction, a detour that wasn't your fault. Once things settle down, you'll catch up. And this feels true. It's not even a lie. Life does have uneven seasons. Then you're scrolling before bed, half out of habit, and there it is. Someone you knew years ago just bought a house. Someone else got promoted. Someone posted a photo from somewhere you've never been, captioned like it was nothing. You don't feel jealous exactly. You feel like you checked a scoreboard you didn't mean to check, and the number wasn't what you expected. You put the phone down. Slower season, you remind yourself. That's all this is. Then something small happens. Small enough you almost don't notice. You're talking to an old friend, someone you haven't spoken to in a while. They mention their timeline, not to compare, just mentioning it the way people do. And you realize something. You've heard this exact timeline before, from 3 or 4 other people. Different names, different cities, same shape, same age. A crack opens. Because if this was really just your slower season, why does everyone else's season move at the same pace as everyone else's? Just not yours? You don't say anything. You keep talking. You laugh at the right moments. The conversation ends normally, but the crack doesn't close. That night, you actually sit with it. Not dramatically. Nothing about this looks like a turning point from the outside. You're just lying there, finally asking the question you'd been avoiding. Behind whom exactly? Behind what person? Doing what thing? By what date? You try to answer. Name a person. Name a deadline. Name a number. You can't. There's no real person you're behind. There's no real date you missed. There's just a feeling of behind with nothing attached to it. Which is strange. A feeling this specific should have a specific cause. It doesn't. So you keep pulling at it. And slowly, you start to notice how this comparison gets built. Not in your conscious mind. Somewhere underneath it. Automatically. Every single day. Here's what's actually happening. And it has a name. At first, it looks like the whole problem is comparison. Just people comparing themselves to other people. So let's start there. In 1954, a psychologist named Leon Festinger described something called social comparison theory. The idea is simple. Without an objective way to measure ourselves, we measure ourselves against other people. This isn't a flaw. It's how humans have always calibrated progress. For most of history, the people around you were the only reference point you had. Your village, your neighbors. That was the whole comparison pool. It was small. It was local. It was limited. What changed isn't the mechanism. It's the size of the pool and what kind of information fills it. Psychologists split comparison into 2 directions. Downward, comparing yourself to someone doing worse. That tends to make you feel better. Upward, comparing yourself to someone doing better. That tends to make you feel worse. Upward comparison isn't the problem by itself. The problem is your feed is built to show you upward comparison by default. Every time. Automatically. Not their average Tuesday. Not the 18 months before the promotion. Not the years of saving before the house. Not the version of them that also felt behind once. You're not seeing their timeline. You're seeing one frame. The frame they chose to publish. And that changes something. It means the gap you feel isn't proof you're weak or slow or behind. It's proof you're comparing your full, unedited footage to someone else's trailer. That's not a character flaw. That's just bad math. Researchers who study this have found the same thing again and again. Passive scrolling through other people's curated posts lowers mood and raises comparison, specifically because the comparison is upward and constant. Think about your own phone for a second. How many faces do you actually see in a normal day, in person? 10? Maybe 20? If you count strangers on the street. Now think about how many highlight moments your feed shows you before lunch. That's the mismatch. Your comparison pool didn't grow by a little. It grew by thousands, and almost all of it is filtered to look like a win. But comparison alone still doesn't explain the whole thing, because you could delete the app tomorrow, and part of this feeling would still be there. So comparison isn't the full system, it's just the first layer. There's something underneath it, and it's not about other people at all. It's about how your own brain handles time. Humans are bad at estimating how long things take. There's a name for this too, the planning fallacy. We underestimate the effort behind almost everything, our own projects, and other people's success. So when you see a milestone announced, your brain doesn't fill in the real process behind it. The years, the mess, the false starts. It fills in whatever the announcement implies, usually something that looks instant. You're not comparing your real life to someone else's real life. You're comparing your real life to a compressed one, edited twice. Once by what they chose to share, once by your own brain, compressing it further. You feel this every time you think, it shouldn't be taking me this long. That sentence is the planning fallacy talking, not the truth. You're measuring your real, slow, boring Tuesday against a version of someone else's journey that got edited down to 30 seconds, which means the timeline in your head was never real either. You weren't slow, you were just the only one whose footage never got cut. So now you've got two layers, a feed built to show you the wrong comparisons, and a brain that compresses other people's timelines. But even together, they still don't explain where the actual number in your head came from, the one that told you what on time was even supposed to look like in the first place. For that, you have to go back further than any app, and further than your own brain's math. You have to go back to where the schedule itself came from. There's a third layer, and it doesn't come from any app. It comes from a script you never agreed to, but absorbed anyway. The sense that certain things should happen by certain ages. A career should look a certain way by your late 20s. Stability should exist by your early 30s. Nobody sat you down and handed you this. It came from 1,000 small signals, family conversations, offhand comments, the way people ask, so where are you at now? Like there's a correct answer. Psychologists call this a social clock, an inherited, shared timetable for life events. Here's the catch. That clock was built for an older, more uniform version of how careers and families actually unfold. Most real paths don't move that evenly anymore, but the clock in your head never got the update. So every time someone asks, where are you at now? You're not just answering them. You're checking yourself against a schedule nobody ever actually promised you, and quietly failing a test that was never real, which means the deadline itself was never yours. You inherited it. You never signed anything. 3 layers now. The feed, the compressed timeline, the inherited schedule, and they explain a lot, but they still don't explain the strangest part of all. Why, even on the days you're actually making real progress, the feeling doesn't go away. That means there's a 4th layer, and it's not out there anywhere. It's inside the very shape of progress itself. And under all of this sits one more distortion, maybe the quietest one. Real progress, the kind that actually compounds into something, is almost never visible while it's happening. Skills, savings, relationships, expertise, almost everything that matters builds slowly and invisibly for a long stretch, then becomes obvious all at once. If you charted it, it wouldn't climb in a straight line. It would stay flat for a long time, then bend sharply once enough has built up underneath it. You can only see that shape looking backward. While you're inside the flat part, which is most of the timeline for almost everyone, it doesn't feel like progress. It feels like nothing is happening. Which means the exact period you're building the most is the period that convinces you you're falling behind the hardest. You're not behind, you're standing in the part of the curve that always looks like standing still, right before it isn't, which means the exact moment you feel most like giving up is usually the moment closest to the bend in the curve, not the moment furthest from it. 4 layers, the feed, the compressed timeline, the inherited schedule, the invisible curve. Not 4 separate facts about your life, 4 pieces of the exact same system, stacked on top of each other, each one hiding until you clear the one above it. Now you can see the whole thing at once. Put it together. A feed built to show you upward comparison by default. A brain that compresses other people's timelines into something faster than reality. An inherited schedule that was never accurate. A kind of progress that hides itself until it's already substantial. That's the feeling you started with. Behind with no person attached. Behind with no deadline attached. Because it was never built from real data. It was built from edited highlights, measured against an outdated script, filtered through a brain that can't see its own growth while it's happening. So here's what actually changes. Once you know all 4 pieces are working on you at once, you stop treating the feeling as information. It isn't a signal that you're actually falling behind. It's a signal that your feed, your brain's sense of time, an old inherited schedule, and the invisible shape of real progress just happen to line up for a second. That's all it is, not a verdict, not evidence, just four distortions, briefly agreeing with each other. So the next time it shows up, and it will, probably soon, probably at night, probably while you're scrolling, don't argue with the feeling directly. Argue with its evidence instead. Ask yourself the same question you asked lying there in the dark. Behind whom, specifically? By when, specifically? Most of the time, you won't be able to answer. And that gap, the second you can't name a real person or a real date, is usually the exact second the pressure loses its grip. Do that enough times, and something shifts. Not the feeling itself. It'll probably keep showing up. That's just how the mechanism works. What shifts is how much authority you give it. You stop treating a flat stretch as proof you've failed, because now you know the flat stretch is usually where the real building's happening. Underneath, where you can't see it yet. You were never late to a race, nobody else was actually running either.